Good evening and welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, 136 days of waiting ends as the president assents to Budget 2016, calls it Budget of Change. Nigerian army continues pounding of Sambisa forest, rescues more captives, including women and children. EFCC withdraws from the home of former Minister of Aviation, Mr. Fani-Kayode, after laying 6-hour siege on his Abuja residence. And President Barack Obama speaks on Donald Trump's 2016 race to the White House, says there is need to scrutinize the Republican candidate's records.
And in business news tonight, interbank rate climbs following central bank's debits on commercial lenders.
And on sports news tonight, Tottenham Hotspur midfielder Musa Dembele banned for 6 games by the FA for violent misconduct.
The long wait is over as the president today did the needful by signing Budget 2016 into law. President Muhammadu Buhari was joined by Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, the leadership of the National Assembly, and some members of the Federal Executive Council. Today's event comes after the National Assembly submitted a copy of the budget to the president. The budget, signed into law, is a total expenditure of 6.06 trillion naira, same as passed by the National Assembly in March. The National Assembly had set recurrent expenditure at 2.6 trillion naira, capital expenditure at 1.5 trillion naira, and fiscal deficit at 2.2 trillion naira. The president had withheld assent after some alterations were noticed in the document. Our correspondent Chukwumanekusi reports, but we do warn you that some of the videos you're about to see do contain flash photography.
It is a very significant day in the history of Nigeria that the 2016 budget has finally been assented to by the president. One after the other, members of the executive and legislative arms of government, those who have something to do with the budget, converge on the president's office for the signing process. He receives what has been described as the clean copy and drops his signature on them to the admiration of all. He says 200 billion naira will go to infrastructure development as against 18 billion naira in previous governments. He thanks the National Assembly and the Nigerian people for their resilience.
It gives me great pleasure today to sign the first full-year budget of this administration into law. I thank the leadership of the National Assembly, in particular the Senate President and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and indeed all members of the National Assembly for their cooperation in making this a reality. This budget is intended to signpost a renewal of our commitment to restoring the budget as a serious article of faith with the Nigerian people. This administration is committed to ensuring that henceforth the annual appropriation bill is presented to the National Assembly in time for passage of the Act before the beginning of the fiscal year. Through the 2016 budget, aptly titled Budget of Change, the government seeks to fulfill its own side of the social contract. The budget I have signed into law provides for aggregate expenditure of 6.06 trillion naira. Further details of the approved budget as well as our strategic implementation will be provided by the Honorable Minister of Budget and National Planning.
The Senate President also responds.
On a serious note, I think we've shown again that despite the challenges, we can come together and work as a government that we all have the interests of the people that have put us here. And I think we should look at the good side and more, and we forge ahead.
First question put to the leadership of the National Assembly borders on how long Nigeria will have to go through this rigorous experience and whether there will not be a repeat of this experience in 2017.
Well, it's one, the fact that the process will start earlier. Don't forget that this is government only came in May of last year. We have a long time now to prepare. The government is in place. All the people who are newly appointed, those in National Assembly, all in place. So I'm sure it will not be like this.
The same optimism shared by the Minister of Budget and National Planning while briefing State House correspondents.
As we're finishing with this budget, we're starting on 2017. And our intention is that the budget should reach the National Assembly early in October to give them enough time to pass the budget before the end of the year.
The ministers said they will be given a full analysis and greater details of the budget subsequently. But concerned Nigerians are saying that this budget must be made to reflect on the lives of the citizens. Chukwuma Onwekusi, Channels Television News.
Joining me now to get his perspective on the signing of the budget is economic analyst, Chief Executive of Financial Derivatives Limited, Mr. Bismarck Rewane. He joins us from Chicago. Mr. Rewane, thank you for joining us on the News at 10. Now, Nigerians have waited long enough for this day. What do you think about today's signing ceremony? Bismarck Rewane, if you can, I'm sure you can hear me. What do you make of today's signing ceremony? Okay. We've waited long enough for this budget, and finally the president has assented, has put a signature on it. What do you make of today's signing ceremony?
Better late than never. After 136 days, it's good that we have a budget signed, and so we can go into implementation. But what's going to happen is that we're going to have 6 months to implement what was supposed to be implemented in 12 months. The important thing to note is that 6 trillion naira is 10% of GDP, and this is going to be implemented at 1 trillion naira a month. The absorptive capacity of the economy to take this in this period is quite suspect. But like I said, the critical things to look at are, one, the price of oil is going to average about $45 or $44 a barrel, which is about 20% more than the benchmark price. However, production is down by 27% to about 1.6 million barrels because of all the problems we have. So net, from a revenue perspective, there's going to be a shortfall. So it means that we need to borrow, and we need to actually to stimulate this economy. The borrow by the lenders, I think that is where the challenge is. But most important is the fact that Nigeria is preparing for 2017. Whatever you do in 2016, it is late. So the impact of this will be felt in 2017. That's the most important thing.
Let's talk more about that impact on the economy at the micro and macro level. How do you think this budget will impact?
Well, to start with, there's a multiplier effect. Government expenditure is an investment and an injection. Once you do that, we are talking about, it is 6 trillion naira is 6% of total GDP. GDP is about 100 trillion naira. Now, the multiplier effect of this will probably be about 2 or 3%. So in all, when you take that together with state government expenditure, you are talking about almost 11 or 12% of GDP. The growth impact will be about 2%. Right now, growth is at estimated about 2.1 to 2.2%, which is way below the average for the past 10 years. But more important, the population is growing at 3% and your GDP is growing at 2%. So we need to make up for that. We need to do things urgently, and we need to change the policy framework, or establish a policy framework, which we are using right now. You will see from the terms and conditions which the lenders are going to give to Nigeria, there will be a need to actually take a look at everything we are doing and make sure that we are consistent, clear, and credible in whatever we're doing. So far, it's a good sign. This is not a silver bullet that will solve all of Nigeria's problems, but I think that it is welcome, and it's a learning curve, which means that in 2017, when we begin to feel the impact and we have a more disciplined budget process, then we will see the full advantage of this policy.
Mr. Iwane, thank you for joining us on the News at 10. Appreciate your thoughts on today's signing of the budget.
Thank you very much for having me.
And in part two, after the break, we'll have more on the budget. So we're joined by the Chief Executive and Economic Analyst of Biodun Adedipe Associates, Dr. Biodun Adedipe himself. Please join us on the News at 10 again.